Our audience today is primarily made up of tech transfer professionals who are at the coalface every day, some who've completed the SCOPRA survey and know exactly what it is and how long it takes to put one together, because they're important data that needs to be gathered from across the organisations. We have heads of tech transfer offices who use these SCOPRA metrics to build strategies in commercialisation. We have university executives, including PVCs, DVCs, VCs and chancellors that are either here now or will be jotting in and out because there's a variety of other meetings at the same time. We have government policy staff, some who you've just seen, but also from other department areas who are setting policy using some of the metrics and understandings from that. We also have a variety of other I'll say attendees from different backgrounds, etc. I'm not naming every single one of you. The purpose of the sessions today are to provide you with an international perspective of how commercialisation data is used and the type of data that's collected, to inform you of the importance of commercialisation data in monitoring and improving commercialisation outcomes for developing government programs, to explain what the strategic examination of the R&D review is, to raise the awareness of the SCOPRA survey and its use as a strategic tool for universities and benchmarking metrics nationally and internationally, to demonstrate the Department of Education's new commercialisation metrics dashboard and explore its use for comparing data with institutions, and to explore how different institutions measure commercialisation success, because that varies across institutions, and how we can use this data to improve our outcomes. Keep in mind that when we discuss metrics and Australia's performance globally from 2000 to 2021, we doubled research expenditure. And at the same time, we decreased the number of tech transfer professionals by 15%. The turnover rate for staff is high, with 19% leaving the research organisation in 2023-2024, and 28% also changed their role, either in restructuring or something like that. Today, we're starting today's session with our keynote speaker, Dr. David Gully. David will provide us with an international flavour to the session, and we'll discuss how other countries are using the data to promote their research commercialisation outcomes. David is the Executive Director and founder of the Technology Transfer Office of the Puerto Rico Science and Technology and Research Trust. It was established in 2017 and is a regional multi-institutional office serving 5 unis with 17 campuses, including 4 medical schools. From 1989 to 2012, he served as an Associate Vice President, Technology and Economic Development for the Uni of Illinois System and Assistant Vice Chancellor for Research at the Chicago campus. His current voluntary service includes Chair of the Autumn International Strategy Committee and Governing Committee member of the National Institute for Innovation in Manufacturing Biopharmaceuticals. Take it away, David.
All right. Thank you very much, Natalie, and thank you to the group for inviting me here to talk a little bit about an international perspective on research commercialization. Before I begin, I'd like to say a word or two about AUTM, AUTM. Many of you may know AUTM, as many of the members are, in fact, international. But AUTM is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. AUTM is a professional nonprofit association of technology transfer professionals, about 3,000 members now, coming from about 800 different institutions, with about 20% of the membership coming from outside North America. I've been involved with AUTM for at least 30 years and volunteered, including serving on the board, as well as a variety of different committees. And at this point, I'm going to talk a little bit about the International Strategy Committee, which I've chaired for the past 5 years. That International Strategy Committee, and thanks in particular to John Grace from KCA, who served also on that committee this past year. But the committee really works across 9 different regions globally. The ASEAN countries, represented and chaired by someone from Thailand. From the Sub-Saharan Africa Committee, chaired by both individuals from the Southern Africa Research Innovation Management Association and the Western African Research Management Association. We have a Canadian regional chair as well. We have one from East Asia, which comes from South Korea. We have the ASTP, the Association for Science and Technology Professionals. That is a pan-European association, and that represents the European group. We have Latin America and the Caribbean, represented with Brazil, both Puerto Rico as well as Chile. We have Oceania. John was chair last year. We have Peter Kambouris this year from KCA. In South Asia, we have that coming from from India. And then we have a West Asia and MENA group that is really represented by individuals from Turkey. So among those different 9 regions, we have shared and continue to share different practices because we're all different in many different ways. Some of us are in mature regions, some of us are in emerging regions, some of us are in regions that are just developing these practices. And so the sharing in this International Strategy Committee is certainly one way to do that. We will meet, in fact, next week when Autumn will celebrate its 50th year anniversary in Washington, D.C. So we look forward to that. Next, please. There we go. Okay. So what I want to do is give you just a bit of a perspective then from Autumn and what Autumn has done over the years. In fact, we started with metrics in about 1992 with the first surveys and organized surveys, surveying somewhere between 200 and 300 universities in the United States. We then also began incorporating Canada. Then we've done about 5 other countries. And so it's been a labor of love, I'd say, from 1992. And it's always changing and evolving. One of the first things we look at, of course, is our basic metrics or the performances. And if you look at our 2023 survey there and you start at the top of the wheel, you'll see research and development expenditures at $104 billion within those organizations, with about 25,000 invention disclosures, which of course are then evaluated. Then we have intellectual property protection, with almost 15,000 new U.S. patent applications filed, as well as about 7,300 patents issued in the U.S. And then we look, of course, at our marketing function, which is extremely important, and then to licensing, with over 9,000 licenses and options executed during that, with about 714 new products that entered the market from the kinds of work that have been done in the past years. We had 900 startup companies, and then we also, since 1992, over 7,000 startups are still operational. So that's really another really important measure for us. Now, we count metrics. A lot of these are activities, not necessarily impacts. So if we want to look at impacts, next, please. Next, please. What you're going to see on this slide are the impacts of that technology transfer work, and it's a cumulative measurement of a variety of very important issues to the economy. And for some reason, the animation is not working. There we go. Thank you. So if we look and counting these, when we decided impacts were really important to count, we look at the gross industrial output that were tied to these kinds of activities, the gross domestic product also that we contributed to, the jobs that were supported through those activities, how many inventions were disclosed, 554,000 during that period of time, 141,000 US patents issued, 18,000 startups. 73% of our licenses are actually for startups and small companies, which is pretty true across most of tech transfer work. And one thing that is extremely important in terms of impacts are drugs and vaccines that have been developed, and over 200 of those that have been tied to university technology transfer since the Bayh-Dole Act of 1980. And I will say that from my campus at the University of Illinois, we're very fortunate to have 5 FDA therapeutics in the market. And we're very, very proud of that kind of work that we do. And we know it all takes a long time. Next, please. So how do we track these metrics and understand these impacts and look at the other kinds of KPIs, performance metrics, other kinds of objectives that we have? So there are a number of surveys and tools that have been developed, just as you've developed a tool there. There's a number of surveys and tools that have been developed over the years, and these are a few of the more important ones for us. First, the Licensing Activity Survey, which is annual, and that's on our basics, the research funding, the impacts, patent activity, licensing income, startups, and so on. And it's fairly detailed, as most surveys are, and we report, though, at a fairly high level. We also do a salary survey every 3 years, and that's very important when you talk about the changes within offices and the if you will, the retention of tech transfer professionals. Salary is a very important consideration. And so every 3 years we do this salary survey, and we look worldwide as much as possible. But we do have, of course, a subset within the US. And in fact, when we hire people or we want to promote people, we use that frequently to look at the variety of levels of education, levels of expertise, the type of institution they'll be working in, their education area, depending on the type of work they're going to do, and so on. And so we can really put together, I think, some competitive salaries for that. And that salary survey is really important for us to do that. And then we have also a material transfer agreement survey. I know material transfer agreements, there's a lot of them. They occur all the time. We try to make them easy enough, but we're looking specifically at MTAs and how institutions manage them, hopefully to keep it a little less onerous on the tech transfer office itself. Next, please. Some tools also have been developed that are a little bit different than surveys. We have Autumn AIM, which is an innovation marketplace, and those are university technologies that are available for licensing. We have over 30,000 technologies on that database, and it's a very, very large database, and you can search the database and so on, and it's at no cost to Autumn members and their institutions. We have a Transact also database, which is a searchable database of terms and conditions, really for a group of licenses that within fields and so on. So that gives us some insight into the kinds of terms and conditions within different fields and within different types of institutions and types of licenses. And so that becomes another tool we use whenever we're constructing our term sheets. We have the STAT, which is a database that has more than 30 years of data on licensing income, patent activity, research funding, staffing, startups, and more. And staffing is interesting because if you look at that data, you'll see that over half of the individuals that work in the technology transfer office are not involved in licensing, but they're involved in a lot of other very, very important work that the technology transfer office is responsible for. And as time has gone on, and which I'll talk about a little bit later, our roles have changed and evolved over time and continue to do that. We have the Better World Project, which is something we're also very, very proud of. We started that in about 2006, and it currently has over 500 stories of technology transfer from around the world, and really allows us to both educate the public as well as our stakeholders, not through data, but through stories, which give impacts, which are much I'm going to say from a communication standpoint, are very, very important. And next, I think we have a little message from Steve Sasalka, who's the CEO of Autumn. Yes, please.
Autumn's Better World project illustrates how the commercialization of research benefits millions of people around the world every day. Whether explaining the origin of the Honeycrisp apple or life-saving cancer therapies like Taxol, the Better World project showcases the important role that technology transfer plays in bringing discoveries to life. Today, the searchable collection includes more than 500 success stories from around the globe. Browse the stories, share the findings, and submit your own innovation success story, and let everyone see how your institution is changing our world.
Great. So thank you. So hopefully that will give you a little perspective on that. And those are collected each year. And then, in fact, we vote each year on the best Better World project and feature that. But those roll out frequently. And as I said, it's been a very important tool in terms of communicating the value that we actually do. Next, please, after the slide. That'll be slide 5. Thank you. So that's the story from the US and Autumn. So if we look at ASTP, very, very similar. And across the, I'm going to say the PAN associations of Europe. And we have in the last surveys there, 24 European countries, 565 institutions reporting. You see again the types of metrics and impacts that are tracked with the amount of contract and collaborative research agreements, with the patents, as they call them, the priority patents there after evaluations, the license agreements, the spin-offs, also the startups that are created, the patents that are granted, the revenue from intellectual property licensing, and also you can see invention disclosure as one of the metrics that's used there. That's again very interesting in Europe, because if anyone has worked either in the US or in Europe, we do count things in a different way. There's a bit of a different perspective that we all bring to it. And I wanted to actually give some credit to someone on the next slide, please. From the European standpoint, probably in around 2010 to 2011, a fellow named Kevin Cullen, who was then at the University of Glasgow and then moved actually to Queensland in his role there. But back in 2010 and 2011, Kevin had to think about, as he says, a way to tell his mother about the work that he does. So what does this tech transfer mean? Or we were calling it also knowledge transfer at the time, and knowledge exchange has now come in a bit another term. So we've had a variety of terms that does describe what we do. But if you look, it's very important to look at Kevin's concept that he shared with his mother, and this has been shared over and over and over again, in fact, and has gotten better over time. But if you look, there's a section of what is done at our institutions that are really research outputs. So new knowledge is created. Publications, processes, materials, technologies, know-how, innovations, and skills. There's a variety of research outputs that come from our institutions. So how do we then exchange, in these words here, transfer the knowledge? And what kinds of channels are used to do that? There's direct outreach, facilities, consultancies, continuous professional development, contract research, collaborative research, IP licensing, company creation and investment. And so the knowledge flows from our institution through these channels. And as a tech transfer professional, or a knowledge transfer professional, or a knowledge exchange professional, this is our channel. This is what we do. And then we have the users. So the users will be startups or spinouts, and there's defined in different ways. We also then, in the big concept, have society, government, and policymakers that are very important to understand what we do. And also entrepreneurs, small companies, and big companies. And if you think about that society, government, and policymaker group, that really relates to the impacts. They're really interested in the impacts and the economic development, creating and retaining jobs, creating new products, providing new services, generating revenue, generating profit, R&D expenditures, and percentage of revenue that comes from new processes and services. And so if you look at this scheme that Kevin has crafted for us many years ago, it really gives you a very overall view of the kind of work that we do. And next, please. Okay. Well, what Kevin said was that he realized that we don't really provide the impacts. The universities don't create the impacts, but we help other people to create impact. And when we try to measure impact, it's very important that we really understand where that impact is, who it affects, and so on. And that's increasingly a very complicated way to look at how this happens and what that impact is beyond our metrics. Next, please. One organization has and continues to do this. The World Intellectual Property Organization, which, as you know, is a unit of the United Nations. And each year they create a Global Innovation Index. And that is a tracker that looks through 130 of the largest economies, and they analyze the state of global innovation within those countries. And they look at several different areas. And it's a very complex study that they do. And one of those is really focused on science and innovation investment, which is what we're certainly concerned with, technological progress, technology adoption, and the socioeconomic impact of innovation. Next, please. There. So if we look at the dashboard, and this is, again, they have a website, you can go in, you can look at it. It's a very, very, and many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with this. But if you look at the science and innovation investment component of this, in the short term and in the longer term, the short term being the last 2022 to 2023, and what's happening across these 130 regions in the R&D investments, as well as venture capital, as well as patent filings. And you can really track this through that dashboard. Of course, this is a very high level summary of what that looks like. And then you can look at the long term as well for a 10-year period of what's been happening within those areas of publications, R&D investments, venture capital, and patent filings. Next, please. So if you look at those 130 innovation economies, you can see a little cluster map over there of where those happen to be. Next. If we look at those and we look at Australia, its ranking in the 2024 Global Innovation Index was number 23. And these are a variety of different characteristics that reside across Australia. Next, please. So if we look at research and development, for example, and we look at these, some of the very important metrics that they track are researchers, full-time equivalencies, gross expenditure on R&D, global corporate R&D investors, and the QS University rankings. You can see there's both a score value and a rank, that rank again being among those 130 innovation economies. Next, please. And if you look, when you look to the side, you'll see that the circle means there's a strength. The circle without filled is a weakness. There's an income group strength and also an income group weakness. So you can look at those. In the innovation linkages, which are really, really interesting as well to look at, public research industry co-publications. And you can see again the value in the rank among the 130, university industry R&D collaboration, state of cluster development, and again, ranking with that, joint venture strategic alliance deals, and patent families. Next, please. Knowledge creation also is one of these areas with science and innovation groupings. Patents by origin, PCT patents by origin, utility models by origin, scientific and technical articles, and also citable documents index. Next, please. And the fourth of that cluster that's really important related to the work that we do is knowledge impact. So labor productivity growth, unicorn valuation, software spending, and also high-tech manufacturing. So if you look across these, and we use this, in fact, within our international strategy group with Autumn, of targeting certain types of activities where we think there may be some benefit in working with a regional group, a regional association, or in fact with WIPO. I've done that many times, worked with WIPO within different regions. And so we begin to target specific areas, and then within those areas, we're able to bring a group of experts together to try to work with that regional group to improve their ranking within the GII. Next, please. So regional similarities and differences, and this is just some of my observations from being with our 9 regional groups. If we look at Turkey, for example, which has had an association, USIMP, for a very long time, and it really focuses on the interface with small and medium enterprises within Turkey. And it's not unique in that, but I'll say it's consistently strong in that. And so their definition of what they do, how they do it, what they measure within Turkey and with USIMP, they really want to keep this consistent across the institutions and also to improve the quality and performance nationally within their small and medium enterprise companies. Next, please. Another country that's had an association for a very long time, in fact, is Brazil. And the national, as they called it, the National Forum Association of Innovation Technology Transfer Managers. In short, in Portuguese, it's FORTEC. So its mission there is a little more traditional in the way you think of it in Australia, the way we think of it in the US as well. But Brazil is a bit different because the institutions are quite differentiated by the type of institutions they are. The private institutions tend to have more resources. The federal institutions tend to have less resources, but more than the state institutions. And so across those 3 different levels of institutions, they have different challenges in being able to affect the kind of work they do in technology transfer. In some cases, you look at institutions in the Amazon area, for example, they have a whole different focus on what they do and how they do it, which means that the individuals that work in tech transfer there require a whole different set of skills that's different. And then you look in the areas around Sao Paulo, for example, it's very industrialized. There's wealth and investment there. It has a whole different feel to it and how the kinds of activities that occur within that. So Brazil, of course, is a very large country, and this complexity of technology transfer and how they do that is certainly shown in that way. And they've really started their organization about 2004 when they had a National Innovation Act, which created technology transfer offices at that time. And again, there are a variety of institutions with a variety of offices. Some are large, some are small, but all, and in fact, they focus a lot on training the technology transfer individuals in the country. So there's a lot of that professional development, and also to develop what they call technology innovation centers that are located within those particular regions. Next, please. And then I wanted to go to Africa as well, and this is sub-Saharan Africa. There are organizations that have been around for a number of years that are research and innovation management associations. So these organizations, there are 3 of them that are I'm going to say the most robust. The South Africa Research and Innovation Management Association, that is in South Africa and the region there called SARIMA for short. There is a Western Association that's actually headquartered in Ghana, and there's an Eastern Association that's headquartered actually in Kenya. But they deal with the different regions within different countries, within, again, a complexity of institutions within each of the countries because of the past history, the colonial history, the more recent history, and how those institutions interact with each other is really interesting to see, and also to be able to understand how they approach the development of each of those institutions. But they're really focused there. They tie research in to technology transfer. They have a lot of advocacy work that they do with the national governments of those regions, and they also want to look at best practices. So again, the professional development component of this is extremely important for them, and how they work across the region that they're in. I will say one thing. One of the things that our International Strategy Committee does is each year we have what we kind of consider the World Cup of leadership in technology transfer. And we have a meeting that's hosted by a country each year. Last year, it was actually in South Africa in November, and they are the local host. WIPO is a partner with Autumn in doing this. We have a whole program. We have 50 countries usually that attend, invitation only. 2 to 3 individuals that are selected from each country are able to attend this, and it's really a leadership summit, so the discussions are very high level. So we have international perspectives from WIPO, and then regional perspectives from all over the world. And so it's a very open dialogue that we have. And then the region that's hosting also includes 3 to 4 days of programming that allows us to go to that region, to go to the institutions, to see what they're doing, to learn about what they're doing, to look at new initiatives, and to really get a good sense of what's happening within their within innovation within that region. And so that was a really good meeting in South Africa this year. The year before, we had it in Chile and Santiago. The year prior to that, we had it in Bangkok, we've had it in Barcelona, we've had it in Geneva, in fact, the year before that, at WIPO itself. And so it moves each year from one continent to the other. And we're planning now for probably October or November, following our meeting in March. We'll hopefully be able to know where we're going to have it. We really look forward to that, though, but it's a really good format to learn about what's going on within the different regions around the world. And next, please. So we all know there are new initiatives, and some initiatives are good and some initiatives may not be so good. And it happens, you know, pendulums swing in both directions. In the US, for example, one thing in 2022, we had something called the CHIPS and Science Act, that authorized $280 billion in new funding to really focus on domestic research and manufacturing of semiconductors, which had primarily left the US and moved to other locations around the world. But 174 billion of that was really to be invested in regions and ecosystems that could build science and technology capacity. And some areas that were focused upon were human spaceflight, quantum computing, material science, biotechnology, experimental physics, research security, societal and ethical considerations, and workforce development. And so those were really the focus areas. And so the tech transfer offices around the US, I'm going to say most of us got involved in these efforts. Whenever the opportunity came to be both involved and perhaps lead some of these ecosystem development activities. Many of us were able to do that, fortunately, and we continue to work in those different strategies with consortium of both public, private individuals and organizations. Next, please. So these place-based investments in ecosystems is a really interesting concept in the US because we really haven't done that before. It's like industrial policy in a way, and we really haven't done that before. But what we found ourselves talking about and discussing a lot and thinking about what was the proper role of our tech transfer offices in these kinds of innovation ecosystems. We know where we fit in our usual work, but this is not usual work. It's broader. It also has to look across the system. So one of the things we did in Puerto Rico, because we're a very large pharmaceutical manufacturing region, we wanted to look at biomanufacturing and our pharma manufacturing to see where we had gaps within the ecosystem. So we did a very thorough and deep, detailed study with one of the major management firms that did this for us. And so we were able then to focus on a few key areas we thought were very important, which would allow us to speed up the kinds of work that we wanted to do and to be able to attract investment in order to make that happen. So we had two programs that came out of this work with the CHIPS and Science Act. One was through the National Science Foundation called the ENGINES program. And then under the Department of Commerce and the Economic Development agencies, tech hubs, or tech hubs as we call them. There were 31 tech hubs designated in the US as areas that would attract investment. It was focused on, in our particular case, national security, essential medicines, onshoring the biomanufacturing of essential medicines, and also really working within the area to improve not only the relationships on the island, but our relationships off the island with other partners and organizations that are critical to do what we needed to do, like logistics industry and others like that are critical for us to make that work in the way it needs to work. So we're moving forward with these. Again, we're hoping that funding continues in the way we hope it does, but we've been able to be successful so far. But it's a very beginning part of our overall strategies in order to really cause impact within that particular industry. And it's really changed the kind of way that we do the work inside the tech transfer office. And so it's also changed the kinds of skills in the individuals we now bring in as partners, whether they are experts, whether they are consultants, whether they are at advisory boards, whether they're part of, we have consortia that are formed around particular areas. And so it's really expanded our interactions with both the public and private sectors. And that's it. Thank you. I hope it's given you kind of a different perspective about tech transfer, knowledge exchange, whatever works in Australia. And you'll see that it's used interchangeably in many ways in many regions. And again, we see the profession continuing to evolve and ensuring that we have places to go find the skills that we need. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, David. We've really appreciated your insights and also the fact that you've dialed in from the US, and it's obviously a different time zone. So thank you very much for that. You've talked about that the role of tech transfer professionals is changing constantly, and professional development is really required to, I guess, upskill your team. So how do you keep your team up to speed with, the changes, moving into precincts, other sort of systems?
Sure. Well, I'm going to say I'm very fortunate. I'm in a private nonprofit trust, so we're fairly flat. We have about 20 different programs, about 250 employees within what we do. So our bureaucracy is not very heavy. But each staff member that we have has an annual professional development plan. So they make a list of the kinds of things they want to learn. And then have an idea about where they want to go to learn that. So, thank you to the virtual world. We were able to do a lot of those things online, but there's also really, really important kinds of learning that occurs whenever you're with a group of people, so you can interact within that group. And so, I have an RTTP, Natalie, like you, so I've RTTP, and also a CLP, so I'm a certified licensing professional as well. Um, but what we found is, again, even beyond those really basic basic skills that we know we need, we constantly have to learn. And so organizations like ASTP, like Autumn, like LES, the Licensed Executive Societies, there's a variety of different technology management groups that offer a lot of different training. So right now we're focused a lot on AI and how we integrate AI into our practices. So it really streamlines our practices, not only in the office, but the kinds of things we do outside the office. So we acquire new platforms that allow us to do that. And it really maximizes the benefit of using those tools for our staff. But, I'm in Puerto Rico, so I'm a small island. And one of the things that's important for us is to be able to connect with individuals that are off the island, because we're the only tech transfer office on the island. We serve the entire island. So it's very important for us to go to other organizations and belong to organizations that offer that kind of training and growth.
Excellent, thank you. And in Australia, KCA provides a variety of training courses as well for the locals around here at the moment. And of course, you're always welcome to come over and try some of our conferences and training. Well, always a salesperson. So we'd like to take questions from the audience now. Please state your name, institution and concise question, and we have a roving mic that we'd like you to use to ask your questions.
Yeah, this is Charlie from the Australian National University. And I was sort of curious by your perspective, sort of sitting on the international committee of many of the in-stage sort of impacts you're looking at were biopharmaceuticals or drugs, and sort of seeing that change with AI and quantum coming through. Are those going to change what we're reporting on those impacts? I mean, that's obviously understandable having come out of COVID, but how that's changing, and from your perspective from tech transfer to sort of globally. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. And, in those of us that are in the more, I'm going to say, technologically developed areas, yes, absolutely. So you look mostly across Europe and some parts of Asia and North America, that discussion's ongoing. In fact, within Autumn, we have user groups around those things, and we have open discussions among that user group about how we're working. Well, we have a few leaders that we have identified. New York University is one of those leaders. And so we're watching the kinds of work they're doing, and then we're being able to adopt some of that as we move forward. And that's the real value of the associations, right? That's the absolute value, is that interchange you can have with others, and the communication and the co-development, in many cases, of those solutions. But you notice again in other areas where there's the regions are less developed, they're coming along, just developing new work. For example, in Thailand, there's just now a new association formed. They're just starting training in a very coordinated fashion. And so we work with those regions. We bring our expertise into those regions and advice with those, and usually in partnership with WIPO as well, and other regional associations to help that move forward. But AI, of course, is always it's going to continue to be a complex issue for us to deal with.
Do we have any other questions?
I can add one thing on AI, for example, with drug discovery. So under under both our NSF engine as well as our EDA Tech Hub, one of the projects that we piloted under NSF was in fact an AI drug discovery and digital twin project. So we brought in a startup that was coming out of a research lab on the mainland. It started with a small manufacturing pilot plant in North Carolina. So we brought it onto the island and we've resourced it to be able to provide additional facilities as well as people who could help in terms of it moving forward. And we recently were given another $14 million from DARPA to really look at how that's going to impact the pharmaceutical industry and to be able to provide demonstration platforms for our pharmaceutical industries to come in and test, to look at testing and so on, and then to be able to duplicate that over time. So those kinds of things come out of those place-based investments, and one of ours was in AI drug discovery and digital twins.
Right, excellent. Does anybody else have any more questions? Right, well, you may finish early today and take up that wine, chocolate, dinner, whatever it was that you had in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's 11:21 in the evening here.
Thank you so much. I know that we've had a couple of meetings and all have taken your time. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Take care.